Hello, Meditation Mastery. How is everybody doing? I have just recently returned from my retreat to Spirit Rock in California. I'm still working on getting words to happen. It was mostly a silent retreat. And so many experiences there, so many teachings, so much happened, and there's so much to share. And now it's just about putting that stuff together in a presentable way. One of the interesting things about this retreat, so it was a 1 week retreat at Spirit Rock, and there's about 70 people who attended, and we had 6 teachers. And this was an advanced practitioners retreat, so everybody there was mostly people who taught meditation or who have just been to a lot of retreats. You have to apply and reach some kind of, I don't even know, like meditation quota to get in. And the theme was awareness. So what I was doing for my first few days there was really just my concentration practice. So often when I lead meditation, I lead a practice of coming back to the body, relaxing, feeling the space around you, kind of relaxing everybody, dropping into some kind of open space, and then finding an object of concentration, like the breath, for instance, and then following the breath and using that as the object to bring the mind. The mind concentrates around the one object that's kind of being held. And as the mind gathers and collects and concentrates and deepens, this is the path of concentration and where that path leads. And I did that for a few days, and I had a personal interview with one of the teachers, and that teacher said to me, you're not doing what we're doing. And she said, it's good. The concentration, it's good. It's necessary. It's part of the Buddhist path. It's one of the tracks, right? But that they were practicing insight, a different kind of thing. And she said, if you want, you can also do this with us. And so I said, sure, what is it that you guys are actually doing here? And she explained it in a way that concentration, or the practice of concentration, how I practice it and teach it, she said it's very conditional in terms of it requires you to have space, it requires you to have this time. A certain amount of conditions have to be in place for you to be able to get kind of concentrated and down into these deeper states. And she said, so the insight practice that they were teaching, it can be practiced all day long in all circumstances. So it's something that it's not kind of confined to your meditation space. And furthermore, she was also saying that, the practice of insight and concentration, because they go so well together and because I'm more developed in my concentration, that I would potentially be able to do really well in this other practice. So she gave me the task, she said, mention something about knowing the knower, which for me was very kind of Zen, and even only like what I would call like pseudo-Buddhism, or it made half sense, kind of knowing the knower. I said, okay. And she said, so just listen, just use your ears and listen, and then ask, who is it that's listening? Who is it that knows that you're listening? What is the knowing? So I sat outside and I listened, and I heard birds chirping and was watching these sounds kind of arising and falling. And then the awareness shifted to ask, well, what is the awareness itself? What is it that's listening? What is the listening? And it started to create this really profound sense of, the best way I could describe it, and I think it's probably because it's accurate, right? This is what the Buddha said, is that we have our 6 consciousnesses. So you have your body consciousness, you have your eyes, your ears, your nose, your mouth, and your mind. So you have these 6 consciousnesses. Each of our 6 consciousnesses is like an open field of awareness. So you have this open field of awareness Your ears have an open field of awareness. Your body is an open field, your mind. So each one of these consciousnesses is switched on and has this open receptivity to it, like a microphone that's turned on, right? But we have 6 microphones, right? One picking up sounds, one picking up sights, one smells, one tastes, one body sensations, and one mental phenomenon, which is like thoughts, feelings. So if you listen to any one of those channels, right, switch to the sound, you'll hear things arising and falling, coming in, coming out, coming in, coming out. Switch to the body channel, feel the body. You'll feel in the body things coming and going, right, sensations moving through. If you switch to any channel and focus on that field of awareness, you'll see that there's sensations coming and going, coming and going. Nothing really substantial, nothing lasting in any one of those fields. But if you switch your awareness from, instead of listening to the sound, to kind of dialing that back a little bit and looking at the awareness itself, what is the consciousness? What is that field? It starts to create a very different sensation, more of like a spacious, almost like a detached or objective sense of being able to experience what's going on in our sensory organ, right? The ear is like a sense organ, without attaching to anything that it's picking up per se. So it was starting to create this experience that, like, instead of listening to sounds, I was focused on or connected to just the sense of awareness as a thing, or knowing, right? That there's something in the mind that, as it picks up information, there's a cognition, right? When you look at your hand, you see it, but then there's also something that understands this is hand, and this is different than this, and this is its own object. And when we receive information, we cognize it. There's something that recognizes and connects it to its relevant information and stories. So instead of looking and seeing hand and going through that whole path of, ooh, hand, and oh, I like hand, or I don't like hand, it was just watching the very awareness itself that's receiving the information. So it was kind of bringing the focus onto the awareness itself on all of the sensory levels, and then also on the mind level. So as the awareness started shifting to the awareness of the mind level, and there's 6 teachers, and they were all talking about this from different angles. One of them started to bring in like Zen Buddhism. And in Zen, they often talk about emptiness. They say like, an empty canoe floated on the river and saw a cloud, and things that you'd hear and you'd not really know what they're talking about. But when this practice started going, right, when I started practicing this strong sense started arising of being empty, that the mind is kind of this empty vessel, right? That there's this empty vessel. They liken it to the sky often, right? That there's the sky, which is this kind of open, empty field. And, a cloud will come into that sky, and then it'll also fade away. And the same thing, that the mind is this field that, a thought will come into and then fade away, right? Or feelings come into and fade away. That the only difference between the space around us and the space within us, so to say, is that there's an awareness that this is just empty space, as far as we know, and that the inner space is charged with a knowing or an awareness or a presence. And getting into that essence of what is that presence, what is that awareness, what is that quality of knowing, it started to create this really powerful shift, also personally in self-identity, that the parts of me that I usually call me, or that I feel like are me, were just sensations being picked up by awareness. That when I asked, who am I felt my body sitting there. Oh, okay, I take my body. This is me. If you right now ask yourself, who am I? Really just sit and say, who am I? Close your eyes. Who am I? Who am I? You'll probably feel like your body's sitting here as almost the container for everything. But what if you shifted that feeling of your body sitting here to just awareness? What if instead of feeling me or body, you just felt awareness was there? All these nerves, right? The body is just a big sense organ of, so it is all awareness. Awareness is coursing through the body. Awareness is coursing through the mind, that anything that I try to grab, anything that I try to make an individual separate object, it's really just made of awareness. It would almost be like if you go to the beach and people are making sand castles. There's all these different castles. Some are beautiful, some are not so beautiful. Some people even make like sand monsters or mermaids. They're all just made of sand. They're all coming from the same substance, and they can all just kind of dissolve back into that substance and will dissolve back into that. So shifting our experience, when I was shifting my experience, and I saw that everything is simply made of this awareness, this knowing. All of my personal experiences just kind of melted. Everything just melted away. And the mind went into these really, really, really deep states of peace and release and freedom. Because there was no boundaries anymore. There was nothing holding anymore. There was nothing to establish upon. And this is what the Buddha was talking about. When the Buddha reached enlightenment, actually, his kind of phrase that he gave out is he said, "O house builder, you are seen. Your ridgepole is broken, your rafters are shattered. Nevermore shall you build a house again." And who the Buddha was talking to, this house builder, is his own sense of self. It's his own perception of having an individual, separate, permanent self, a me, a thing that's called me. And the more that you have a sense of me, the more you act out of me-ness, the more you create things stemming from me, you build up momentum, you build up karma, and then you're received back things that invite the me to come out even more, right? So it's kind of this interplay between acting out of the me, and then the world responds, and then it gives the me more chances, and then you keep going and going and going. And in Buddhism, that's what they say about the cycle of rebirth, is that when you die, that then comes into the next being, and then that comes into the next being, and it keeps going and going, because there's always the sense of me that propels the whole mechanism, the whole process forwards. And something really profound was happening during this retreat, because I was able to take those 6 fields, as I like to call them, the 6 fields of awareness, and scan them individually and see within the 6 fields, if you really look, everything you've ever experienced in your entire life, it's your body, it's your sights, sounds, smells, tastes, and your mind. That is your entire life of experience. Anything you have ever experienced has only happened in one of these 6 places. It has either been a sensory experience, or it has been an internal mentality experience of thoughts and feelings and things like this. So all we have is these 6 senses. That's it. And everything we experience happens within that. So when you really start investigating those 6 senses one by one, going into them, and then you also start looking, so where am I? What is the me? Where is Seth in those 6 senses? There slowly comes this kind of realization, or this awakening or opening to the fact that there is nothing within any of that that's very tangible or graspable. That even wanting to call the sense of awareness or knowing Seth, it didn't feel right, because it didn't even feel like there was a body of knowing or a body of awareness. It's like when there's hearing, there's awareness that rises up to meet that hearing, right? So it's like you're with the hearing, a bird chirps, and there's an awareness that comes up and fully understands that sound and the bird, and then that awareness fades away. And then there's a body feeling, and then within the body feeling, an awareness rises up to greet that body feeling, to see what is that. And each of the 6 senses, it has its own awareness, it has its own consciousness, right? Its own awareness is attending to it. So it's not like there's this one you there's actually like 6 yous in that sense, that each of our awarenesses, each of our consciousnesses, it has its own kind of attendance. It has its own arising mind that comes to greet it. And going through these again and again and cycling and watching, it really just creates, it's very eye-opening. It's almost like when you're looking at a Magic Eye poster and suddenly, the image pops out and you get it, right? You're looking at optical illusion and like, how is it that, these lines look the same or these colors look the same, but what we live in our daily life, what we are experiencing, I think even, Einstein, he said it was an optical delusion of consciousness, that we are focused outwards through our senses, and through those senses we create an optical illusion, an assumption of a self inside of there, of a me back in the middle of that through our experience. And I mean, I don't have to tell you, like, check right now, you feel like I'm me, I'm sitting here and I have my thoughts and my feelings and my memories and my story and my name and my clothes and my bedroom, and there's all these things that are mine that validate that there's the me, right? But when we start dropping in and really pulling things apart, making that experience, really starting to experience what is that me, or what isn't that me, or is there that me, that's ultimately what Buddhism is about. That's really what this path is about. It's that we use this mind of concentration, that we gather the mind, we bring the mind into a place where it's able to rest and see clearly and be present. And then we use that mind to also kind of look around. And we start to see, what is the truth? What is the reality? And this isn't a reality like I read this in a book or like somebody told me. This is when you actually deeply look into the fabric of your own experience. What are you seeing? And that's all that this is about. And even the Buddha himself said, if there's anything I tell you that doesn't match up with your experience, discard it. Your experience is what matters. But you have to be making the actual experiences. And when I say you have to be making the experiences, again, because right now we are in a deluded mind state. Right now we experience this self, this me, this I within all of this, because our mind is outward projecting and scattered. When we can collect the mind and when we can aim the mind at the different fields of awareness, when we can really start looking at the different parts of the mind, the consciousnesses, when we start investigating the internal world, what's going on, that's when we'll start really gaining this knowledge and this understanding, right? So there's like a whole journey and a whole process. There's like work to be done inwards, inside of ourselves. So it's not like when you see people meditating, they're just sitting there, blissing out. They might be, and that's part of it. But then there's this whole other side of proactive investigation of really looking and learning and understanding and making new experiences about reality, about your reality, what is real. And through these experiences, things start clarifying and things start releasing and opening up. And it starts leading to these really amazing, powerful states of freedom. There was times where I felt very blissful, where I was sitting, and I'd sit for hours, just a couple hours, and I'd just be sitting, wow, just smiling and going through this and just feeling things melting away and opening up. And it was amazing, right? It was beautiful. And it's something that I think, of course, it helps to be on retreat. It helps to be having guidance. Also for myself, it helps to have been a monk for almost 10 years and to be teaching meditation so often, so I'm always thinking about it and looking at it. But it's really a practice that anybody can do. Anybody can really take the time to be with the feelings of the body, even when you're walking around doing stuff, right? Or you're sitting down and it's really busy outside, you're in a restaurant or you're in line somewhere. Switch to the ear consciousness, listen, watch the sounds coming and going, and then try to look at, well, what is that sense of awareness? What is listening? Yeah, your eyes, right? that our senses are always turned on. They're always available. They're always accessible. They're always usable for our practice. So what does effort mean in practice? What is our actual work? The work for this kind of practice, for insight practice, it's just that work of turning the mind inwards. And that's it. So it's not like when we're doing the concentration where it's like, you get in your room, you make sure nobody's coming, you close all the doors, you sit, you have to go through all these stages of progressively getting more and more kind of secluded from everything, getting secluded from your own body, secluded from your own thoughts, kind of drifting away into this stillness. With the insight practice, you can choose whatever sense is most relevant at whatever moment you are in your life. And instead of, one of the teachers, somebody said, like, are dogs enlightened? It's one of these questions. And he said, well, dogs have very strong present moment awareness, right? So if you look at like a dog or an animal, they're present the whole time. Yeah, you don't see animals daydreaming. They're kind of present with what's happening, or they're just, they're just feeling like relaxed, or they're kind of alert in their senses, but they're always kind of here, with their senses. Humans, we have a reflexive quality of the mind where we can be aware of the awareness. So for instance, a dog can never be mindful, because a dog can't say, you hold up a bone, the dog runs over and the dog's staring at that bone. It's very present moment aware of that bone, but that dog cannot be aware of that awareness. That dog cannot say, ooh, now I see a bone. Oh, that's arising lust in me. I'm running towards that bone. Oh, why aren't they dropping that bone? Oh, I'm watching myself wanting that bone to be dropped. That reflecting on the experience that you're making. Oh, wow, I feel all this grasping in me coming up for this bone. I feel this burning in me. That turning the mind back inward, that's something that animals, they don't have that reflexive quality of the mind, right? Most humans don't use that quality of the mind, but we have it. Yeah, and what is practice? What would spiritual practice in this sense be? It's being able to, instead of being caught up in the mind, believing the objects and the moods and the things that are happening, is just turning the mind back a little bit to be aware of the awarenesses, to be aware of the consciousness, to be aware of what's coming up in the mind, what is reacting, what is my behaviors around that, what is my grasping, my clinging, just watching the internal world, or even really simply just on the very, very basic level, watching the consciousness itself, right? Is that I can hear noises. I'm in a noisy restaurant. So I just sit and I just practice basic mindfulness, listening to all the noise, just as noise, right? Or I do this like insight awareness practice where I take one step in. What is aware of the noise? Yeah. These are kind of the two fields that we can examine. Examine inside of the consciousness itself. What are the objects, the sensations arising? Or step two, you could look at who or what is the awareness that's perceiving this? Yeah, and even step three, if you want, well, who is the one that's even directing the mind? You ask this like, who am I kind of practice that. When we're meditating, we have the sense like it's me shining the light of awareness on my breath, for instance, right? And instead of like always trying to shine the light of awareness on the breath, why not say, well, what is the light of awareness that's being shown? And then also ultimately, who is shining that light? What is the me that is directing the mind towards the breath? What is in there? Turning totally back, right? Try to look yourself in the face. Yeah, without using a mirror. Try to look yourself in the face. Who is it that's looking through those eyes? Who is thinking those thoughts? What is in there? Yeah, and when you really investigate this, you're not going to, there's nothing that you're going to be able to grasp. There's going to be some senses of things, but it's like, it's almost like a ghost that, you feel like there's something back there, but when you turn to look, you don't find anything. And then you look forward and then it's back there again, and then you turn and it's gone. And it's kind of like this cat and mouse game where there's a sense of self, but when you investigate, there's nowhere that you can really find it. But as soon as you turn the mind back outwards, it pops back up in the background. So really starting to notice that process. So I understand that this is a little bit of a different texture or flavor or level of teaching than I usually give on the meditation masteries. But I think that this is a really interesting thing to investigate. This is something, it's like hours of fun for the whole family, that you really could take as much time as you want and just investigate individually all of your senses, investigate, your body, feeling different things arising, pleasure and pain arise in the body, how you want the pleasure, how you reject the pain, right? Really being present with the consciousnesses, and then again taking that step back to what is that awareness itself. Yeah, really trying to feel what is awareness. Yeah, and then again taking the other step, like even the bigger one, which would be like coming right to the mind awareness, like what is mind, who am I, what is the me? Turning in and trying to experience what is the knowing. Yeah, trying to just experience knowing in a pure way without it being I am knowing, my knowing. What is just the knowingness of experience? What is the quality? So it's a lot of exploratory kind of things, I guess. And during the retreat also, it wasn't so clear. They didn't want to give you any answers. They didn't want to tell you, like, this is how it is, as much as they wanted to say, here's different strategies and approaches and practices, and try them out and see what you find. So my voice is like fading on me. I haven't really talked much in the last week, but that's kind of my invitation to you as well, is to start using your senses. Start just being present with the senses. Try to know the knower. What is knowing the senses? What is the awareness? What is the knowing within each of the 6 senses? And then ultimately, right, getting really deep into well, who am I? What is the me? Where and what is this thing that I call me? Where is that to be found? Yeah, can I find that? Can I experience it? Go on your own search and see what you come up with, and it's a very fruitful practice. So thank you for listening to the talk today, and I'll be leading a meditation shortly.